Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Twizzlers. Long day, late night, feeling a little bored? Twizzlers is the ultimate sidekick for any moment of the day, no matter what kind of day you're having. The perfect level of sweet and a fun excuse to sit back and relax. Unwind with Twizzlers. To buy now, visit Hersheyland.com/Twizzlers.
What's up?
Bullet.
Welcome to another episode of Giving Flowers, joined by the man, the legend, the king of style, Eric Iberg. What's good, Iberg?
Life is good. How are you, Phil?
Doing
dog.
great, man.
Summertime. Are you stoked for today? Josh Berman, man. Level 1.
Be more stoked. Oh, don't give it up too quick there. We got to introduce the man, get some suspense built.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. It's your time to shine. Phil, why don't you introduce who we're
I was
talking to today?
thinking you managed to pull off a different cap every episode so far. How many Twin City caps you got?
I haven't counted. I normally like this one's super nasty, right? So they get decommissioned when they get sweated out. But then I brought it back and I painted it yellow. So it's still dope. Can't tell on
the custom. One thing about our guest today is he wear more hats than you got Twin City caps. Founder, director, producer, DP, cinematographer, marketing director, sound designer, the list goes on. The cast of skiers that featured in this production company since its inception is to skiing what Marvel is to superhero films. He gave unknown skiers a platform to rocket launch their careers into space, turning some into superstars. I grew up devouring their flicks. Before skiing, as a child, I wouldn't eat. That's all my diet consisted of. Ski flicks. That's how I got great.
It's true.
We're pleased to welcome 20-plus movie maker, many different project, mogul in the game of skiing. Everybody, put your hands together for the founder of Level 1 Productions.
Bullet, Josh Berman.
We got Josh Berman.
But is he here?
He's here.
Success. Boom, bomb. Connect. Yeah, Josh.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Nice to have a conversation with you after 25 years.
Absolutely, man. So good to see you both. And B, thanks for that introduction.
He's a pro, man. He's going to go after we do this for a year or two, man. He'll be able to script write and just be epic. Like if he could have wrote the back descriptions to our movies and they didn't have to think about it, it would have been so nice.
No doubt.
Absolutely deserved and honored to have you on, man. I am surprised. Been chatting with Iberg back and forth, and he told me you guys never really had any conversations together in life and being in the same field, doing the same thing in parallel, just like running on opposite sides of the road, kind of. But it's good to have you guys both.
I'm stoked, man. I'm stoked on the lane you created, and to take where Phil brought it. The whole point of doing the show is we want to make sure everyone that helped create this sport gets their flowers while they're around, and make sure they know what they really did, why I exist, why Phil exists, why the sport exists today, and you're one of these people, and we wanted to make sure we tell you how awesome you are, and thank you for all the stuff that you did do for the sport, and it makes even people listen to this shit, and so you're still here at least. So whole point of the show, man, is just to big you up and thank you for everything you did for skiing, and we'll give you down a little ride here the next hour and just high five you.
Well, hopefully I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I'm sticking around for the long term.
That's the goal, man.
Both in ski industry and obviously in life. But But yeah, man, we are level one is still alive and kicking, and we might not be making annual feature length films, but it's actually been a really cool opportunity to shuffle the deck a little bit and expand some of the things that we have done and create some new opportunities and find new cool ways to give back a little bit. So exciting
Gotta
times.
evolve.
Gotta evolve, man. And you know, you do anything for 20 years straight, it was like a hamster wheel. I got on that hamster wheel in, you know, late 1999, and you know, the production cycle, which, you know, you can speak to as well, Iberg, for these annual feature length films, it's more than 12 months. So you get on the wheel, you start filming in the fall as soon as the snow starts falling. And, you know, there were days where we would, you know, kick things off in a, you know, Denver street shoot in October when we get early season snow. And like the movie might not even be publicly out yet from the year before, and we're already shooting for the next one.
And that's why I think you're amazing too, is because you made annual films. Like it was the biggest thing that I was anti, you know, and like that's why you had your lane. And like, but I want to start with that. First of all, your contributions for ski films, like the annual ski film. You know, like the biggest thing that I was a fan of when I started, because Balance came out, what, 99 or 2000?
2000.
Okay. So like at this time, it was a crazy year, right? So like I already quit school in the fall of 98. I was like, man, I'm going to make a movie. I wanted to do it on high eights. You know, like it was not even digital video. And so I'm like, I wrote all my proposals and stuff. And like people would reject me and being like, man, we represent the highest quality. If we're going to like sponsor you, you need to be the highest quality product, which is 16 millimeter film. So like I went through all this rejection for 98 and 99. And then all of a sudden 2000 came and you hit, man. Like you were the only digital film because Johnny just went to 16, right? Poor boys.
Sure. Yeah.
And so when I saw you come in the game, I was like, you were the only person that I think went to school in the whole world, because we all had passion. And we're like, we're going to fucking do it. Woo! And you're like, well, does it make sense? And so like my biggest thing that I always respected you for was the idea that you actually produced maybe what was more realistic, that was affordable for a product, you know, because the 16 millimeter dream was, it wasn't, there's no realistic. I mean, $500 for 3 minutes compared to $500 for how many tens of hours that you were working with. So I want to congratulate you for coming up with not only the yearly plan to do it for 20 years, but probably a sustainable plan at the beginning, you know, to be able to even think about the next year and not go, oh shit, dude, I still need this money, etc.
Yeah.
So
well, thanks, man. I mean, it was kind of just by default, like shooting digital, shooting to tape was the only option. Like there was no opportunity for me to shoot 16. You know, I learned how to shoot 16. I had my hands on a 16 millimeter camera at school. I knew what to do with it, but I think I probably shot like 10 rolls, you know, through my entire, you know, film education in school. And, you know, each of those rolls was what, you know, a couple $100, you know, by process. And then the time involved with that too, versus, you know, shooting to Digi 8, you know, at the time was the first camera I had. But, I mean, there was no other way to do it. Like there was no funding. Like we're eating the cheapest fast food we could, you know, carpooling 5 or 6 dudes, you know, driving across country to get to events, and, you know, everybody's crashing on couches. Like hotels weren't even in the budget. So, I mean, there was no budget. So certainly, you know, everything was very much bootstrapped, and there was no opportunity to, you know, even think about 16. And, you know, there was definitely a stigma at that point for shooting digital. Like I remember in 2000 shooting at X Games, because we all used to go to events, right? And that's where we'd shoot half our movies, hanging out on the deck of a pipe or the deck of a big air jump. But, you know, everybody's looking at me like I'm this kid with a camera. And some people got it and some people did not. But, you know, I feel like there are some old heads that continue to look at me as just this kid with a camera getting in their way for years. And maybe that never changed. I think probably some of those dudes still think of me as this annoying kid with a camera.
Well, you just got that catch up in 2006 and 7 when everyone went digi. So all of a sudden you were like cool, like 10 years after you were cool from the beginning, you know, and everyone's like, so it's just, that part was super fun to watch. And so like another thing about you starting and doing it like that, you had to create your own niche, right? And it was the East Coast jib flick. So like the dopest part, you created your own lane because you got to introduce people that we didn't know in the sport. You got to show locations that we didn't know in the sport. And so there was no way. Like, I mean, if you watch the other big films in the year 2000, if there was twin tip skiing, it was a summer glacier contest, and that was 50% of everyone's segment. So, I mean, at least you brought something that wasn't only contest. It was all new names. So it's like getting a mixtape almost, right? You're like, who the fuck is that? Who the fuck is that? and then it was 45 people. So you were like a Guatemalan persuader for the East Coast, man. So it was super fun your first couple of years, because that's how we learned without the internet, visually, other than someone saying someone's cool on New Schoolers or Poor Boys Forum. So big up yourself, man, on even like giving this platform for a whole crew in the East Coast and Quebec. You're counted as East Coast too, Phil. You know, like the platform for us all to learn who they were a little more in depth and whatever. So that's a pretty big deal, man, because no one else did that when you started.
Thanks, man. But again, I think it just goes back to, shooting the things that I knew and doing the things that I was familiar with, because there wasn't, much of an opportunity otherwise. Like I wasn't trying to break the mold, and I was just trying to hang out with my friends who like to mess around in the streets, like to shred park, and that's all we had. So, it was really a very organic means to break in at ski filmmaking, was just shooting your friends and staying true to what you knew, which I think is what, all the other crews that I found have been most successful in the years since have done. You're doing it for a passion. You're oftentimes it's an athlete who didn't quite have the chops to like keep up with his homies who become really, really good. Or, it's just somebody who's part of the crew who, gravitates towards picking up a camera. But, either way, like the most successful crews over time have been the people who, did it for the passion. They're not trying to create something to sell, to appeal to to, it's just like, this is what we do. We fucking love it. And this is why we're going to do it this way. And, there was no plan for me.
So why did you have that? Here's my question. You're in school. It's 1999, 98. I think, is it your sister who was an aerialist? Yes. Or cousin? Yep. Okay, so you have a sister. Did you do freestyle, moguls, aerials, or ballet or anything?
I did, yeah. So, I mean, that's what I grew up doing at a certain point. I mean, I was just kind of, messing around on my own until I want to say like 13, 14. I definitely got a late start in it, but, I was hanging out at Stratton Mountain and saw these kids in their, neon yellow and hot pink get-ups with knee patches on, and followed them down the mountain for a couple of days. And it's like, that was the hot ticket. I mean, that was like the cool thing that was going on in the early and mid 90s, before snowboard parks and everything that kind of, broke the ice on, what we ended up doing. But yeah, I mean, that's where I came from. And, I got to the point in the late 90s where I was going to school, and, I wasn't going to be able to compete with the kids who, for one, were more talented than I was, and for two, were training and doing this on a year-round basis.
And are you talking moguls and aerials at this point?
Moguls, really. Like, okay. I didn't like going upside down enough to really get into aerials. I was doing upright aerials for an acro or ballet for combined, but moguls and
What was your upright aerial trick?
It was a 360 Iron Cross Zidnik spread, which was inspired by Evan Divvig, who was doing them in like the early 90s. And I got a tape from US Nationals with him doing this thing and was like, what is that? Like, that's the wildest shit ever. Because nobody was even doing sevens at that point. It was like people were doing threes and, trying to, like 180 spread 180 was a big thing in upright aerials. And it was like, oh my God, Evan Divvig, like whatever this thing is that he did. And my coach at the time, Bruce Bolesky, called it a toilet bowl because it was 360 degrees around and had a lot of shit in the middle. And so I was doing the toilet bowl as my upright air trick. And like I was good, but not good enough to really do something with it. And that's kind of when twin tip skis were becoming a thing. And I happened to be in the right place, the right time on the East Coast, which, used to have a bigger presence in the ski scene, I think, than it does now. I mean, there's a big trade show and on snow demo at Stratton Mountain, which is my home mountain. And I actually met Doug Leventhal, who was J-Lev's brother, was there doing a demo for Line ski boards. And I got to rip around ski boards one day. I was like, this is fun. This is cool. And at the same time, I was hanging out with a group from Venustar, and, they put me on their program when they had ski boards, which they put me on for a couple shoots. And then this thing called a ripstick, which was a 151 centimeter twin tip ski, which, this is pre 1080. Like,
so your deal with was Tim Curran the man at the time?
Tim Curran was the man at the time. Yeah. Yeah, he put me on these ripsticks. Yes, they're 151 centimeters. The Euro people were sending them out with riser plates under the bindings because they thought that it was going to be a cool carving tool. And this is on the heels of parabolic skis and that becoming like a real hot product in skiing. So they thought this was kind of the next thing. So you could carve and you could go backwards. And I was like, no, I can ski backwards and hit jumps backwards and land backwards. That's what I want to do. That's what I think the future is. And yeah, I got to the point where I was taking time off from school to go to shoots and trade shows and hang out and do a few things with Dina Star. And I ended up blowing out my knee actually in January of 2000 and doing some pretty significant damage, which sidelined what would have been a very mediocre professional skiing career if I continued to pursue it. So, everything happens for a reason. And, I committed to taking the time off from school that winter and picked up a camera and was working with Jeff Winterton, who was kind of the king of the East Coast scene at that point in time, shooting photos and organizing what there was of a crew and interest in the sport. And I remember hitting Jeff up and being like, yeah, man, like I committed to taking time off from school. I got to keep myself busy. Like, what if I like make a ski movie? Should I make a ski movie? Can I just like hang out with you? And
at this time, have you seen Degenerates or State of Mind at this time?
Absolutely. 100%. I mean, that's the other thing that we can, give Johnny D props because, with the films that he was making at that point were the biggest game changer. Yeah. And I got a hold of, a VHS copy of a copy, probably of a copy of, it was either State of Mind or Degenerates. I forget which one it was, whatever came first. And
State of Mind came out in 97 and then Degenerates in 98.
Yeah. And that's what it was. And I worked for a production company in New York City and they had a VHS dub machine. So I took my copy of a copy as soon as I started to like burn that out, I made another copy of that so I could keep it going. And yeah, sorry for making copies of your copies, Johnny, but I didn't even know at that point where to get it.
I didn't even know State of Mind existed. I ended up moving to Utah and saw Degenerates for the first time. I was like, what the fuck is this? I thought there was only stunt movies. Yeah, it was not normal. Destroyed that VHS for sure.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
So you knew there was an ability to make a freestyle movie because of that.
Absolutely, 100%. And like, I didn't plan on necessarily doing it professionally or turning it into anything, but got to the end of the season and started editing. And I remember just kind of having an epiphany editing what became Rory Will's part and just being like, damn, like this looks like a ski movie. Like that's what this looks and feels like. Like I would watch this if somebody put it in front of me and I would think it was cool. And I remember being like, can I do this for like 10 or 12 or 20 other athletes and make this into like a real thing? And the pieces of the puzzle just kind of fell into place again, really without like much of a definitive plan. And I wrapped the thing up, I think sometime in like October or November even, because there was no, deadline or goal for release. It was just like, make this thing, and ended up sending it to, I want to say like Champion Visions, which was the Japanese distributor. And I remember doing some research, like who's distributing these things. And, nobody wanted to get back to me. Nobody wanted to email me, call me, whatever. And these folks at Champion Visions were like, ooh, we'll take 250 copies of this. And I was like,
give thanks for Japan.
Yeah, thanks Japan. Like now, how do I make copies of this? What do I do? And that's how it all started.
That was fucking awesome. Phil, I'm going to let you tangent. I just looked at the time. I was like, holy cow, man, I guess this one could go a couple hours. So, and I'm only this part. So, Phil, I know you got shit.
It's been so good to listen. You guys go back and forth, and this is what I expected from it also. I guess, like, in any endeavor, like, you associate with people and make something great by uniting and having combined forces. And so, in your case, you did 3 years about on your own. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
pretty
then
much.
Got joined by the mastermind that you put on, and I want to know how that relationship began with Friedel Cody, who is your big time associate.
Absolutely, yeah. Big ups to Friedel. So, Again, the East Coast scene in the early 2000s was pretty tight knit and small, and you could probably count on two hands the people that actually had twin tip skis and were actively going out and pushing it. And I think it was December of 2000, Jeff Winterton set up a shoot for a Mountain of the Month feature in Freeze magazine at Sugarloaf, and we went up there, and Friedel, Cody, I want to say, and his brother joined. I don't quite know. I assume it was Winterton who probably invited them, but I remember Friedel, Cody drank a bunch of beer and passed out under the kitchen table in the condo, and that was my first meeting of Friedel. And he was just a super hungry, enthusiastic kid. He's probably like 16 years old. He was just like really all about this burgeoning scene, and he was into making videos. I want to say he had a production company at the time that was called Craze Productions, CRZ, Craze Productions. Yeah, there's the man. And and he had a younger brother, Emil, who was a super talented skier, and actually one of the first kids who really got into street skiing and rail skiing. And Emil
I forgot that was his. I didn't even know that was his brother.
Yes, and in fact, like Emil early on had like remarkable talent. Not only just for balance and sliding on rails, which a lot of people didn't know what to do with, but he would not fall, and that was like a big thing. Like it was a differentiating factor in a lot of careers. Athletes that knew how to fall or to hop off a rail or a feature and save themselves and not tomahawk down the stairs could get back up and session it and hit another 50 times until they got it. And
I always say Phil's best trick in his whole career is knowing how to fall.
Yes. I mean, it is an absolute skill set. And Emil was like almost to a fault, because I remember some crazy late night sessions where he would just keep hopping off a rail. And, hours later he'd get it. He's like, yeah, I probably could have gotten that like by 10 p.m. and it's like 4 a.m. And he's like, yeah, I probably could have gotten it. I just, hopped off a little early, I think, because I wasn't quite feeling it. And it was just like, oh my God. But,
why do you got to say that?
Yeah, but props to him, because he knew how to keep it going and to save himself and to, be able to live to slide another rail. And so, yeah, Emil entered the picture as an athlete, and Friedel was just kind of, really tagging along. And he had ins at that point to a bunch of kids that were in the snowboard scene on the come up. We had Travis Kennedy, who was living outside of Stowe, and Cole Barish, who's a super talented photographer who was, I want to say, going to high school with Friedel at the time. And a few other cats. And so those guys were hanging out with our crew through Friedel, and they had a few shots in the credits of some early level 1 films. And and that was kind of Friedel's intro to the scene. And then Friedel moved out to Tahoe, I want to say to Kirkwood maybe, and was doing the night janitor thing so he could ski all day and clean toilets and mop floors a little bit at night, and then pick up his camera and follow his friends around. And I forget exactly how it happened, but I knew that Friedel had a lot of passion and a lot of skill, and a lot to offer. And it's like, well, he's a natural fit for figuring out whatever the next step is. And the next step at that point, I was living in Boulder. I moved out from the East Coast, and it was Friedel coming out during the summer of 2003 to help edit some of the bonus features and stuff with Forward, and contribute some of the stuff the content that he had shot that winter, and just crash on the couch in the level 1 office, which was just the back bedroom of the place that I was living at in Boulder. And the rest is history. He kind of took the ball and ran with it. And, level 1 would not be where it is today, certainly without Friedel's contribution.
I have a fan question, because you brought to that time period when you moved to Boulder. So I believe it was the same year you wrote on the cover of your movie, because it used to be an East Coast jib flick. Yeah. And then you crossed it out and said an East Coast base jib flick, right?
So that was Balance. That was the first one. But
I guess the idea was, when you moved out there, did you feel like, because why I liked you at the beginning was because I got to watch all different unique people and locations. Sure. You as a producer, did you feel like you were expanding, or did you feel like leaving the East Coast was, you weren't being able to document the East Coast like you used to, or did you just ready to move on?
I think I was just ready to move on. I was also living in my parents' place in southern Vermont, and my dad was working in New York City, and my family was living in New York, and my dad retired, and the family was going to move up, and it's like, well, I'm too old at like 23 or 24, 23 years old to live with my parents, and at the same time being based at the end of a dirt road in southern Vermont was just not the best spot to like grow a business. And
No, because I was saying to Phil, you picked by ending up in Denver, like you're genius, because it's just like there's no better place to have an outdoor society and a major, because Salt Lake's not diverse, so they don't really understand the idea of urban skiing or you know what I mean? Just any little thing where it's just like everything I saw, even where you ended up, no one else figured it out. Everyone else wanted to live a place where like your expansion into all different shit and your relations you get to meet because of your location of where you're based. I mean, it was probably game changers from Boulder being there, and then
I mean, it was also a little bit of happenstance there. Again, I never had this like grand plan. Like, these are the steps I'm going to take. This is where I'm going to go and why I'm going to go here. I moved out to Boulder because I was dating a girl who was a student at CU, and I also had a lot of friends that were students there. And it was like, well, that's the natural place to go. Like Utah, I hung out there a bunch. I had a lot of friends there, but it's like, my girlfriend goes to CU, so I'm going to move to Boulder. And it
just happens to be the home of Freeze and Free Skier, which happens to be the best promotional link you could ever have for movies.
Absolutely, yeah. And when I moved there, you could probably launch a water balloon off my front porch and hit the Free Skier offices, across the way. And Freeze was, a little further, maybe a half mile away at that point. And I mean, it was really, the center of the free skiing universe at that point. And Boulder didn't quite work out, and ended up moving to Denver, which was the next best thing, and set up shop here. And I've been here ever since.
Speaking about Freeze, I got a question from Shane McFalls, legendary dude who started Line Traveling Circus with Andy Perry and Will Weston. He asked, can you tell us a story about driving the Freeze limo back when the Molson Rail Jam was happening?
Yeah. So came up with this idea. What if we could like bring a rail with us to different places? It's like, well, can you mount a rail on a car? It's like, well, yes, but it'd be a pretty short rail, so you need a really long car. So, it'd be great as a limousine. And this is before Smith had their limousine. This was like, came up with this idea kind of in a vacuum. And it's like, hit up the guys at Freeze with this idea. They're just like, love it. Like, we'll support this. We'll give you $500 to buy a limousine. There's your budget. I was like, all right, yeah. Well, I was like, I can make this happen. I mean, again, everything is super bootstrapped. So when there's a will, there's a way. And I found a limousine with a clean title for $500. And Peter Olenek and I drove down to pick it up. And I had him drive it back. And I think like the 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive from where we found it in Massachusetts probably almost killed him, because there was a catalytic converter like leak, and it was like filling up the cabin of this limo. It's 84 Caddy super stretch with like toxic exhaust fumes. And so we got it to the folks at Stratton, and I think I had to barter or trade with them for their welder to put a rail, a 6-inch flat beam rail on this thing. And unfortunately, like by the time we put it all together, Smith had, come out with their own limo, and it actually functioned and drove a lot better than, our super ghetto $500 limousine. And we only got to set it up and shoot with it once, unfortunately, where we also drove up to the Molson Snow Jam, which I think that stop was in just north of Albany, and we rented a U-Haul because we had to figure out a place to go park this thing. We had to have a hill. We had to have, permission or something, just because, it was, I want to say September, and we were still trying to shoot some stuff for the movie that came out that season. And anyway, we filled up the U-Haul with snow at the Snow Jam. We drove it down to the RPI campus in Troy, New York, and set this thing up. And I think we had just gotten started with our session in the middle of the night. And I remember Derek Finn was there, Emil was there, but maybe Emil couldn't hit it because I think Emil had a broken wrist or something. Anyway, and there's this dude Paul Cotter who famously introed the Poor Boys movie a year or two before, doing, I think it was the first flip to rail disaster on skis that he did at Super Park. I think that's his name, Paul Cotter. Does that sound familiar?
You're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And for some reason, I think he was at the Snow Jam, so he was hanging out with us, and he was there. And something happened where somebody called the cops, and I'd become at that point an expert at diffusing the situation with cops and talking them into letting us do almost anything. And I think Paul was about to drop in, the cops were standing in front of him, and he did something to piss off the cops. And anyway, the whole thing got shut down, and that was the end of it. And the Freeze limo had so many problems with the engine and the exhaust that I couldn't afford to keep the darn thing running. And last time I saw it was probably 2003 or 2004 in a field outside of my friend's place in Bennington, Vermont, and it's probably still there today.
It's awesome. Someone's got to go winch it.
Seriously.
Yes.
It's in the field.
Another thing that Shane asked and I thought was brilliant and also influenced me very much, because ski movies are mainly directors for me to listen to new music. That's how I got my inspiration as a youth. And you had a reoccurring artist again and again that I really love, and that's DL Incognito. Can you tell us how you discovered DL?
Sure. So all the credit there goes to Scott Hibbert and a couple of the other Canadians in his group. I want to say Hibbert met him in like a Burger King or a McDonald's or something weird like that. And Hibbert was definitely the one that introed me to DL. And he was really into what we were doing and really excited and sent us some really good music. And, you know, it was really a challenge at the time to find one, good music, and then two, music you could get the rights to. And so, you know, we definitely exploited that opportunity. And I think, you know, it was Strike 3, 2002. And we ended up putting in like 3 or 4 DL tracks that year, and then continuing to keep the ball rolling with him for years to come. And, you know, he kind of became a hallmark of what Level One was doing musically. And, you know, he had this raw, fun hip hop East Coast sound, and became a friend. Like, we ended up bringing him out to Boulder for the Shanghai 6 premiere in 2005, and, you know, he performed live there, which is probably one of the most insane premieres I've ever had the pleasure of being at. And you know, it's funny, like I keep in touch with him, probably hit him up like once every year or two, and like, remember me? And he's always super cool. And yeah, good to reconnect with the guy.
If you're thinking, I should go for a run today, but it looks like it could rain, Sierra says save on epic rain jackets. If you're also thinking, but I can't go out in these beat up old running shoes, Sierra says save on top brand running shoes. And if you're still thinking, but I'm also busy performing brain surgery, well, then we say, you really should have led with that. Sierra, let's get moving to your local store, like now. Go!
Greatness hurts. It's 10,000 hours of hard work, sweat, and setbacks. The aches, the stumbles, the falls. Tylenol provides pain relief for the champion in us all. It's the #1 doctor-recommended brand of pain relief and fever reduction. This summer, when greatness hurts, Tylenol will be there with care to help you keep chasing it. That's Tylenol. That's care without limits. Visit Tylenol.com/greatness-hurts to learn more. Use as directed.
Wow. Okay. I did not know you guys had a close relationship like that. Did you ever speak about having something fully exclusive, like a dub plate, him shouting out Level One? Is that ever been an occurrence?
You know, we never really talked about that. You know, in retrospect, we definitely should have done that. I think that, you know, creatively that would have been a lot of fun to do. But no, I mean, at that point, you know, soundtrack was almost an afterthought, in the sense that, you know, we were working so hard just to capture content, you know, even through the summers while we were editing, that it was just like, all right, we need finished music. We're just going to put it in there with a needle drop and edit to that music. And yeah, probably screwed up and should have taken more of an opportunity to work with DL, because dude was super talented.
Random question, just because I forgot to ask this. Did you know after that first year that you wanted to release a movie every year? Like, or did you just say that's what you're supposed to do because that's what everyone else does?
I think it was just that's what we were supposed to do, and that's what
Okay.
everybody else was doing, and that's kind of what really started the whole thing. For balance I made while I was still a student and taking the winter off. Second generation, I did the same thing. I was a student and I took the winter off, and I graduated right when I want to say right before we started shooting Strike 3, and the whole idea originally wasn't to make another ski film, but then it was like, well, I got to give this a shot and do this as a full-time endeavor for 1 year. Like I'm broke, but I don't need any money, and I've got no real obligations in life. So we're going to make this film, Strike 3, and then I'm out. And that was the whole concept behind naming it Strike 3. Strike 3, and I'm out. And I was going to go to New York or LA and pursue a much more traditional commercial filmmaking career. And by the time we got done with Strike 3, again, it just it speaks to like the overlapping nature of these production cycles that, the film was probably being edited still in September and came out in October. And meanwhile, it's like about to snow, and everyone's like, "Oh, dude, it's snowing! Like, let's go shoot something." And it's like, "Okay, cool. That's what we do. There's snow on the ground, so we're gonna go shoot." And I never even had time to really step back and think about it. And then all of a sudden, we're just making another film and called it forward because that was the direction we were going. And then you get so wrapped up in this cycle. Not only because it's what the athletes were doing, and they wanted to release a segment every year, and the films were the way that they supported and promoted their own careers. Like, this is what they did and what they brought to their sponsors as far as value. I'm a professional skier. I'm shooting for this movie. The movie comes out in the fall, and so I wasn't the one to think far enough ahead to try to break that mold and do a multi-year project. And the other thing that I think really was instrumental in that model early on is the action was progressing so quickly that there was no reason to hold off for 2 years, and it probably would have been a detriment to the end product because every time you're going out, you're shooting things that have never happened before. You're shooting a trick that has never been done before, and you get to the end of the year and you've got a couple 100 hours of content that's super fresh that you're trying to cut down into 45 minutes. Like, there was no real advantage to.
No, I wasn't even thinking about a 2-year project when asking you that question. It's more of like, because you evolve to so many different things, right? Like to super unknown, to maybe some you're almost running events when you're setting up shoots. So like you already had event production, live event production, you have this kind of marketing. So like for me, it was always interesting because I was like, well, what else could I do in certain elements? Because sky was the limit. You were writing your own tomorrow, right? Just like how there's a new trick every day, there's new opportunity, and that's why you create it all. So it was more interesting because for sure, when do you think the first people made a 2-year movie? It wasn't until after 2010 or something, right? I don't even remember.
Probably not. Yeah.
So. Well, that brings me
to skiing into the future is the motto.
You got
level one.
Level one.
That's the tagline. Friedel also came up with that too. On the topic of Friedel, he came up with that. He came up with a lot of the movie titles, especially in the later years. I think early on, I was the one coming up with the movie titles, and then that kind of shifted towards Friedel. Friedel also came up with the level 1 script logo, which is obviously stood the test of time and continues to be the logo that we hang our hat on today. But that was a Friedel Cody original.
I'm going to tangent, right? Because that's a great one. So the logo, another big thing I was very impressed always was with you as merchandising. So a lot of people could have done it. You had a great name for doing it, but then you figured out how to do it. Now there was ways you did it, direct sales, and then also the big thing I thought where you won in life was doing collaborations, right? Like the first year with Gibberish and shit. So that made people think you were a clothing company. So when you sold it direct, people were comfortable with it. But I heard crazy rumors. I remember like maybe 2009 or 10, like that you were making more off merchandising than movies. Was that true at this time, or did you ever make more in merch than you did off sales of movies?
No, it was. I don't think that's really quite the case. I mean, what I've always told people is that selling merchandise and gear supports our filmmaking habit. And I think there are a couple things that I'd speak to there. For one, that was really a big paradigm shift for us in terms of being able to continue to make an annual feature length film. Like, sponsors would come and go, and I was the director, the marketing guy, the principal editor, principal cinematographer, the cat herder, the everything, and I was also the only person in sales and business development for level one. And so all the sponsored contracts and relationships were on me. And when you're out shooting for 12 hours in the streets, it's really hard to even find time to get to emails and stay on top of these relationships and negotiating contracts and making sure things are paid. So anyway, I probably got on a really backward cycle of just making a movie with the people that we wanted to work with the best way we could, and then trying to raise money on the back end. And, we'd be getting checks from sponsors during the summer when we're wrapping up the movie. And I remember there were like always these questions of like, yo, like, we got to finish the movie. Do you want a logo in the intro or not? Because if you do, you got to sign the contract. Like, I have 3 is in 10 days. Like, do you want a logo in here or not?
Yeah.
So, being able to sell the merch allowed us to develop a revenue stream where no matter what, we're going into the next fall feeling comfortable about making a movie. Like, I've got enough to pay for gas, for food, for a little bit of a stipend for Friedel to buy a laptop and some tapes and, keep the lights on.
And where I thought it was dope is you just had people like hyping your shit as billboards, and so like, it's like if you saw like probably at this era, if you're in Minnesota at Highland Hills in 2007 to 10, you saw some guy with a level 1 hoodie that you're down with him, just like how when we saw a guy with twin tips 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
So it's very unique to see what you did with a logo, because there's very few like brands, and the other brands that did it, that was their job. Right.
Yeah.
And like Armada, the only reason we were successful at the beginning was because we're the only company that sold a goddamn hooded sweatshirt with our logo on it. And so did, I think Line was the only other company in the whole world.
Yeah.
So like to see you do that as a production company and then be able to make another stream of revenue in a marketing category where it should have been money spent. Just want to big you up on that, because that was the cool thing, and where you can still see where people wear old ones, they have pride in it if it's 10 years old or something. So it's a legacy that you created.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, honestly, that is another thing that, was never so much of a plan. It is just sort of a thing that developed organically, which again is why I think it ended up being successful. Like, we had a cool logo. We made t-shirts really, just for ourselves and because we were hyped. And, the reality was that we had such a tight-knit crew of athletes who were hyped on working with us and what we were doing that, they wanted to rep it. No questions asked. Like, I never asked Wallish or B back in the day to wear it. It was just, especially in the days when we were making tall tees.
But think about this, man. It was a gold medal for Wallish. Like, because of Unknown, and then all of a sudden he got that level 1 fucking tall hooded fit, man.
Yeah.
Dude, all of a sudden his style went from like thrift store gangster to fucking level 1 gangster, and it's like he certified you certified him, and then it was booyah. It was awesome.
Absolutely, man. Thanks, dude. Yeah, well, again, it was just like super organic. And on that topic, I, probably would have to speak to what was going on with our collabs at the time too. And, that was just something that we had to do. We were working with a bunch of companies who, instead of paying us anything at all, were giving us product. Like, I had 3 or 4 annual contracts in a row with Solomon, where they were sponsoring our film to include Peter Olenek, Simon Dumont, Charles Gagne. But the sponsorship entailed them sending us a bunch of skis, and I would sell the skis, and that's how I would make ends meet and help pay for things. And at one point it got to us getting, 30, 40, 50, 60 pair of skis and bindings from Vocal, from Line, from Solomon. And, I was selling them all out of my townhome here in Aurora outside of Denver. And I feel like there were a couple of years we probably did more volume in ski sales through Craigslist and eBay than some small ski shops were doing. And I mean, that was another full-time job in its own right. But based on that, we ended up having a conversation with the guys at Gibberish who were really keen on supporting what we were doing and getting involved. And rather than them just giving us something, I don't know who had the idea of, doing an actual collab, but that's what it became. Like, well, they can't give us money, but they can give us 100 hoodies that we're paying for, by the way. They're not even giving us the hoodies. We're paying for these, but there's a cool co-branding thing, and there's value in working with these guys. And and so that kind of allowed us to develop and really see this model of being able to approach brands. Well, hey, Solomon, instead of you giving us like 25 pair of skis or 30 pair of skis, and granted we never did a collab with Solomon, we'd go to other companies and they would do a collab ski. We did it with Moment Skis for a number of years. We did it with J Skis a few years ago. We did we're actually doing another collab with J Skis, and I'm actually really hyped about coming out this fall.
Awesome.
But we did Skull Candy headphones, we did full tilt boots, we did so many things where it would cost the brand pennies on the dollar to produce this collab. And we would then be able to sell the collab to raise an incremental amount of money and then deliver a sponsorship package to the brand. And then we're also pushing the hell out of it. And
you're the best marketer you could get for any product of someone's brand, because you're going to hook your riders up, like you're going to run everywhere.
And so then Wells Lamont's another great example. And so, then we put this stuff on the athletes rep it, and then we are waving that flag and being like, yo, Wells Lamont is super cool. You want to buy these mitts, they're the shit. And then Wells Lamont further benefits from that side of the relationship. So these collab products were such a cool opportunity for the brands and for Level One that had all these different touch points. And, were a huge opportunity for us to really, think outside the box with business development and not try to rely on, the typical cash flow that sometimes it came in, sometimes it did not. And and it kept us alive.
To jump out of the fashion realm and back to the movie making realm, earlier you were saying Frito was responsible for naming a bunch of the early on movies, and at some point, except for Balance, you follow this numerology where Second Generation, Strike 3, Forward, High Five, Shanghai 6, and then it broke at Long Story Short. Can you tell us about breaking the numerology cycle that year? What went into the decision?
Yeah, I think we just got to the point where we were limiting ourselves. It was a really fun exercise for a couple years where it felt very natural. Second Generation spoke to exactly what was going on. We were working with the second generation of kids in the sport that were, really breaking the mold and doing new things. Strike 3 was going to be the last Level One movie, and that's why it was Strike 3. Forward, we were moving forward. High Five was kind of like a celebration of, I feel like we've really arrived with like a crew that is dedicated to working with us, and we're doing our own thing. And I'm living out in Colorado. And then Shanghai 6, I think Friedel made a joke in the High Five credits saying, stay tuned for next year's movie, or keep an eye out for next year's movie, Shanghai 5. And we thought that was a really funny, weird joke. And we're like, no, we're going to keep that. And then we got to the point after that where it no longer felt natural. Like, I don't know. We just wanted to start thinking outside the box and coming up with things that were more pertinent to the theme of the movie or what was going on in our lives or with the sport. And so, yeah, it had to change at some point.
And one of the biggest thing that you did, in my opinion, for skiing in general, and it speaks to Shanghai 6, because May High Five been his first appearance, but in 2004 there was Super Unknown, a video contest that would give the opportunity to anybody to enter and show off and be picked to be one of the new stars in a Level One movie. How did that concept come to fruition?
Sure. I was living in Boulder. It was 2003, and I literally remember walking down the sidewalk and thinking, like, there needs to be some cool new avenue for kids on the come up in the sport to get noticed. That's not going to the U.S. Open. That's not going to X Games qualifiers, which at that point was still an open event, because there's so many challenges for people living all over the country or eventually all over the world. And it was just like this one funnel. And if you couldn't afford to get there, And even if you did, if you know you didn't have something going on, you weren't working on a Switch 7 or a Switch 5 or something that was going to put you on the podium, like you really weren't getting noticed.
And that's how you
And that's
started your career. You documented these kids that weren't the fucking superstars, MSP, Poor Boys, TGR.
Absolutely. And it's just like, well, you know, like, and it was also something that I was like, well, if I were an athlete today, what would I want to have as an opportunity? And it's like, this would be rad if I were an athlete. And, you know, what if we just created a way for kids to get noticed? And people were sending us tapes all the time. Like, I think this is right around when I started working for Spy, also as the Spy ski segment manager. So people were sending me VHS tapes and CDs with 10 megabyte files on them, QuickTime files to watch their promo videos. And it's like, yeah, we can do something with this. So that's when we started Super Unknown. It was obviously very loose at that point. And we're watching Corey Vanderler's winning video from Super Unknown 1 right there. But yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of heads that came through Super Unknown, certainly over the years. But even then, I think Tim Dirksey was the other one who notably entered Super Unknown 1 and had a really awesome, interesting edit at the time. But yeah, I mean, that was something that we just kind of got the ball rolling, and there's no reason to stop it because we can continue to evolve it. And it's certainly, you know, something that stands on its own. It doesn't necessarily need a level 1 annual feature film to support it. It's you know, it's its own beast at this point.
No, because now it's like a cool entry to get to go to not a contest, but a gathering. And then that gathering's going to put you all together with other dope people. And it's like, you're like, okay, win a chance to network. You know, and so it's like, that's what you've created now, because all of a sudden they get to go meet how many kids from other countries. Be like, oh, should we film together? Let's stay in touch. What's your Instagram? And so even if you don't, they're not the winner, that everyone won. Like, it's pretty wicked, because especially, like, exactly. There's so little outlets. Like, I mean, there's not even jib contests anymore. There's not whatever.
We'll talk about that in a minute. But
awesome.
But yeah, as far as Super Unknown, I describe it and have described it for a while. Well, actually, I'll rewind a little bit. So, I mean, the contest lived online digitally for the first 9 years. And, you know, we always talked about doing it in some kind of live event format. And that came to fruition in 2009, 10, 11, 12. Wow. 2012, maybe, when we went to Sun Valley. And, you know, we've been doing these live event formats since then, where, you know, for a long time, we took the top 10 male finalists or the top 10 finalists, and we've expanded it to include women over the past couple of years too. We've got 5 women and 10 men. And it's something that I describe as a mix of a pro level ski film shoot and summer camp. And, you know, it typically is like the most fun week of my year every year, even if I'm working like 18, 20-hour days, which is usually the case, because from all the on mountain, on hill logistics to, you know, helping to edit the pieces and kind of corral all the cats and everything that comes with it, it's insanely hectic. But, you know, it's the kind of thing that we talk to a lot of people. We used to do formal interviews at the end of every week, and everybody, the theme seems to be, this is the most fun week of my life. This is the most fun I've ever had. This is fucking amazing. Thank you. You know, and then people ask, if they didn't win, can they enter again? Can they come back next year?
No, it's pretty awesome, man. I think that it, like, if we're to look like the outlet you gave to people always is your biggest contribution. And you just look at the outlet to the East Coasters at the beginning, the outlet on your films, the platform you give, the platform, like, even though it's not in the film, but like submit something and give, to wear something that makes them feel part of something, so they actually like have a reason to do it rather than just be a solo weirdo in their life. Yeah, man, you got lots and lots of things that you definitely deserve credit for. So that was kind of the purpose of all this.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And actually, I'll give you guys a little hot tip sneak peek. So we're working on Super Unknown 20. It's the 20th anniversary this year, which is crazy to think that that's been going on that long. And we're hoping, knock on wood, that we're going to be able to bring it back to Mammoth after our super successful event that we ran with them last year. But you know, this year we're trying to mix it up a little bit, considering the anniversary, and also just considering we want to evolve the what's behind it all, you know, to begin with. And we're planning on turning into super unknown. And we're hoping to bring our 15 finalists and then 45 pros from around the world and have it really be a mix of what used to be Super Park and Super Unknown. And,
That's awesome.
Yeah, not only just give our finalists, these kids, an opportunity to really be part of something that's that much bigger, but also just try to bring back a little bit of that Super Park vibe, which I don't know if we'll ever be able to do it exactly how it was done back in the day, but certainly there's something to be recaptured there. There are a few really awesome events around the world that gather some of the top pros, and it's a pretty special thing. And I think that at least for this year, Mammoth is certainly going to be the place to do it, and it's a cool next step in the evolution of what Super Unknown can be. And if we can pull it off, it'll be unbelievable.
Yeah, I love Mammoth.
Casabon, you got to make sure you're out there for that.
Oh man, that would be a treat, an honor. That's really good to hear. I'm excited already. I'm just looking at images from Mammoth right now and just getting stoked. Like Iberg said, I love Mammoth as well.
Sunny. It snows like 10 feet at night in January, and then it's like 50 degrees and sunny the next day. It's just great. Everything about it. If it's windy like a little bit, you're like, it's too windy. Maybe I'll take a day off. Why? Because it's just sunny and hot all the other days.
Indeed.
True.
Indeed.
Yeah, another thing to give you flowers about is your perseverance, and that speaks to the 20th anniversary of Super Unknown Unreal. 20 movies, 3 mini movies, a movie coming up with Trevor Keniston, Parker's doing another joint with Friedel, Brady with Mango. So I'm wondering, through all of this, I'm sure there's been ups and downs. I'm wondering if you can share with us a moment that was, other than the strike 3 part, that you almost decided to close shop in there because it was not worthy anymore.
Sure. Probably a couple in there. Shanghai 6 that came out in 2005. That was a bit of a blunder. And I'm not going to say there was ever a point where we really thought about closing up shop, but moreover that we thought like shit.
I lost it.
Shanghai 6, there's a little bit of a mix up in the color grading and correction, and ultimately we had like 10,000 DVDs that showed up, and they were so dark that it looked like shit. And like I remember having to go to premieres and go to premiere in a bar, and I had to turn up the brightness manually on all the TVs in the bar so you could see it. And we're getting complaints from customers, and it was just like, man, like we can't afford to do another run of DVDs. Like we tied up every last penny that I had in the bank account at that point to do this run. And like, is everybody going to ask for a refund? And are we going to be screwed because I can't give refunds? We can't do this again. And that was actually a scary moment where I definitely lost a lot of sleep because I didn't know if we'd be able to survive it. At the end of the day, I think that very few people, relatively speaking, even noticed that there was a problem. I think people probably just turned up the brightness on their TVs and are like, sick, good movie.
The privilege of having people watch shit they love, man. You can have a lot of shit as a professional editor and be like, I hate this. And you're like, yeah, but I mean, that's the best part about video. That's why I even wanted to do it. I'm like, no one cares. The consumer wants the trick because it's so new. And when I'd have these conversations like with people and I'm like, now you think about it, it's a new trick. They're crashing 9 out of 10 times. Now, 9 out of 10 crashes is very expensive on film. So if you look at what's turnaround, like, and no one ever understood it. Like, that's why even like with Be Inspired or like say with Education of Style in 2012, we had 45 different cameras that were just handheld. Like shitty ass ones from there. And we're just like, I mean, it sucked coding it all, fucking spending 2 weeks making the formats the same in the edit. But like, once said and done, people only cared what Phil and Henrik did. And as long as they bobbed their head and were like, hell yeah, I want to throw shit at the screen. So that's what's great about our audience.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I tend to take these things too seriously and be a little bit of a perfectionist, and so that comes into play too. Where, did I overreact a little? Probably, but did it look like crap compared to what I've been staring at on the screen all summer long? Absolutely. So it was a little bit.
But that's why you're good at what you do. If like you couldn't do it better, then you'd probably suck at what you do.
Yeah, true.
I always can do it better.
Yeah, and then I think the other big one was really just the shakeup in our crews when, so we got to the point where, for a number of years, we worked really hard to build up all the athletes that worked with us, because we were their platform. We wanted to do whatever was in their best interest and make them the best parts possible to grow them. And what I didn't realize is that it was also growing them as a brand. And back in the day, you probably remember this too, Iberg, like sponsors that we'd work with on these films, would come to us and be like, here is money. Our brand is supporting this film. Make the movie good. Include some of our athletes. Great, done deal. And it got to the point where that line item in the budget became attributed specifically to the athletes. And the athletes got to the point where like, well, I want to do this a little differently. Whether it's fatigue from just being part of a crew or a bigger project that's not speaking directly to their independent goals and style and everything that comes with it. I mean, Casabon, perfect example. We worked with you for a few years, loved working with you. And, you got to the point where you're like, I want to do my own thing. And it was awesome for 101 reasons why, we got to see you and other people break out. Parker and Chris Logan being another perfect example of
Matt Wallace.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah,
all those people used you as a springboard to create their, because then as a fan, I mean, think about it. We got to watch Wallace's own vision. Then we got to watch fucking Parker and I'm a dick. Chris's vision, and like everyone's vision, and they did come from you, but it was like that new era was the start of the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, I mean, there was also a time where everybody in the crew did everything. The same dudes that you're shooting backcountry with in February, you're shooting at the park with in April and May. And then as the sport grew and the crew grew and diversified, you get people that are a little more specialized. And so it became a situation where it's not all one crew. You have different crews, different factions within your film. And so it became a little more fragmented. And I think that played a big role in creating a situation where people like Casabon were like, yo, I can't really relate to all these other people and all these other music choices and the way that they're skiing. And, I got my own thing and this is my vision and I'm going to pursue my vision. And so, that needed to happen 100% just for the growth of the sport and for all the athletes independently. But it also was a huge, kink in the hose for what we were doing, where, all of a sudden, the people that we were not only, relying on, who were the superstars of our films, but, who were my friends and the people that I was, leaning on and expecting to be part of our crew. And, that also coincided with a time in my life where, I had a child and I, had all these other things in my life that were making it harder for me to play the same role that I had in the past, where I would travel for 6 months out of the year and be there for everyone at every point in time. And, you cannot do it all. And so, 2012, 2013, 2014, that's, when things started to fracture in the crew in terms of, the people we had involved. And I was getting pulled in a lot of different directions. And it's like, well, how much longer can we sustain this? And also, why are we sustaining this? Like, what are we doing here? Do we want to do this? Like, we had to all answer some really hard questions and, really do some soul searching.
So what was the final answer? I mean, you're still here, but like, what made you want to keep going after all those? Like, was it Super Unknown? Was it the yearly flick? What was it that realistically made you guys go, hell yeah, let's keep this? Because it's a big deal. Like, you help revolutionize a sport, and that's why I'm amazed by most. That's even why I want to do this, because think about how many guys are still in the game. Like, that's so nuts. Now let's imagine it's 2000 when you started your career. What filmmakers were we talking about that were around in 2000 that were so? Why everyone's so special that we talk to is because how long you guys last to keep a passion burning and to lead the revolution for 20 years straight is pretty impressive. So what is it now, like, other than the Super Unknown, that like makes there's a future you're creating?
I think for one, I'm just stubborn. I think that's part of it. Like, I refuse to fail. Like, if I'm doing something, it has got to be successful. Like, there's no option to fail, and pulling the plug would feel like a failure unless there was a real reason to pull that plug.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't an immediate option. And then, with the annual cycle, there was always just the reintroduction of some new talent and a little bit of new passion and a new set of goals and new things that we wanted to do and things that we could do better. And so even if the fire wasn't burning bright for a few years, and it probably wasn't, like, we still had enough motivation to continue down that path and figure out a way to make it work. And, it's funny thinking about some of the movie titles, like a lot of that is reflected in, some of the movie titles. Like Less was kind of the, bottom of the barrel, I think, for me, as far as where I was in life. I was in the middle of a shitty divorce, and, business was not booming. And, all of my favorite athletes were off doing independent projects. And that's in part why we called it Less. It was just like, we are, kind of at the bottom, and we're going to do a little bit of rebuilding here. And yeah, and then I'll tell you, we just got to a certain point a few years later where, you see the number 20 on the horizon, a few years out is like something that you can reach for as a goal. And it's like, well, you know what? We're going to get to 20. We're going to get to 20 movies. Like, we're so close. We're not going to call it quits at 17 or 18 or 16. It's just, you're close to reaching this like high water mark. And what's funny too, like, is everybody around me, Friedel and Shuey at that point. Shuey, big shout out to him. He's been our creative director forever and ever and ever. Currently living in Germany, working still full time for us. And, he's been big part of the heart and soul of Level One over the years. That's right, Shuey. And, he and Friedel were the ones who were saying, we're not going to make a 21st annual film. And, if they had come to me and been like, we really want to make a 21st annual film, I would have done it in a heartbeat. We'd probably be on our 23rd annual right now. But, I needed that reality check from the people around me to, kind of redirect our energy. And, that's been a big blessing too.
Well, I think what's awesome is one of the platforms that you use is you did movie tours. So to see now, like, why throw those relationships out the window of 20 years? And so, like, what I got to see you do now is use that platform, which you put your life into, for these other kids' projects. Right now that I get to see them, like, oh, check it out at the Level One movie tour stop. And it's like, you don't even have a movie, but you're giving them all your platform. Why? Because they're too busy filming and editing, being athletes, being whatever they do. Yeah. And so, like, yeah, that part is huge, because there's a reason why, because not everyone can do it all. So the fact that you have this now is even an outlet for, like, say, Brady and Mango, right? Like, are they going to organize a tour the size you can, where you can just plug them in? And then not only that, but you're going to plug in 2 movies beside them. So then you give them credibility within the sport, where they all give each other credibility, and you say, this is what's dope. And so you're still doing what you did. You're just curating production companies underneath you now.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's the goal. We spent 20 years building this foundation of learning how to run events and really throw a party that stokes people out for skiing. And, certainly for the first 20 years, it was to give our own films a platform. And then, now that has changed, we still know how to do this. And I think it's so important to maintain a presence of live events in the sport for the culture. Like, it is, so key. I mean,
you have to be live to participate. So if it's a culture in which you have to be present, well, then you have to share, it's just the only reason ski shops are hanging on, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a physical presence of life. But we'll see how long that part lasts.
Yeah. But premieres occupy this very special place in my heart. And, if you've ever been to, well, a ski movie premiere in general, but certainly, a Level One premiere over the years. I mean, we always said that it was like equal parts party and ski film screening. We try really hard to not put them in seated venues, to make sure people are standing, and to make sure it feels like a concert, to make sure that you can be shoulder to shoulder with people that are sharing this collective energy with you. And that's always been so important to us. And, once we started giving a platform to people like Jake and, certainly Parker and Friedel, who, they came up with that on their own. But, we wanted to take what we learned and what we built and, create something for those guys. And then it's like, well, Parker's got a 10-minute project. Jake's got an 8-minute project. We can't spend $5,000 on a theater for 20 minutes of skiing, like what else can we do? Oh, let's hit up some of our other friends who are doing a cool independent project. They've got a 5-minute thing that's going to go on YouTube in a month. But you know what? If we can put 1,500 people in a theater to scream and yell and see this thing for the first time, like that'd be insane.
Yeah.
Like that's how these things need to be watched, not on your phone.
Yeah.
And granted, that's the way to reach the masses. And sadly, that's how a lot of people are digesting ski content these days. But if you can, just crank the volume to 11 and be in these packed theaters, it's the best experience. And, if we can do that for, 6, 8, 10 different projects and, apply the formula that we've learned over the years and take it around to a few major cities, then, all the better. And I think it's going to be,
and it's just like a music tour because you have opening acts, you have this act, and then you have intermissions to throw stuff. So it's like your formula is there. Because the reason why I got so excited is because we took Phil and we took the Be Inspired trailer on tour, right? And it was 5 minutes. And we did 45 stops across America with Phil and Henrik and myself to show a trailer. But the only way I could do that was I had to go find independent people. So I got Sean Pettit's movie, his first one, and Kai in Search or whatever. And so we were able to make that platform where all of a sudden it's like, I got a car. Phil and Henrik got this was for your trailers for fucking Road to Zion and whatever. It wasn't a Be Inspired tour. So either way, it was Inspired, yep. So it was like 4 little independent projects where it was just like, and it made sense and you could see how stoked everyone was and it didn't get people bored because once you hit 40 minutes in a movie theater sitting watching trick, it's always been kind of boring, even in 2000. So yeah, big up yourself on that platform, man. That's like a list of 50 things, man, you've done.
Thanks.
Do we miss anything,
Go
Phil?
ahead, Josh. I was just thinking, being mindful of Josh's time and also giving the opportunity for a caller to join the conversation. Would you mind, Josh, if we pop someone in and
let's do it, man?
Have some time to have him ask you a question. I think we got none other than Stojan on the chat. So what a person to invite on. Let's put him on blast and see if he's got something for you. Anybody unfamiliar with Stojan? He's Henrik Arlo's filmer, right hand, and all-around great human being. We'll see if he is up near his phone here, but there we go. Stojan,
you're looking so Vikingish.
What's up?
Beard game strong.
Yeah. You look like you want to kill something.
I'm peeling some mushrooms.
Maybe kill some mushrooms.
Woo!
Hell yeah, Stojan.
Good to see you, man.
I was surprised.
Yeah, so Stoj, I was thinking putting you on blast and have you ask the man here, the god Berman, a question if you can think of anything.
I wrote a question before. I always wonder about the Scott Hibbert crash segment.
Yeah, that is a great one. That is a fun topic, man.
Oh no, that is a good one. I'd be happy to share that story. So Hibbert and I were really close back in the day, and like a lot of relationships, you spend a lot of time traveling with people, especially like those early years. We were together 24/7 for like 6 months of the year, and a lot of the athletes that I work with, they became like family and like my brothers in all the good ways and all the bad ways. And it was, I guess, spring of 2003. We were up in Whistler, and I forget exactly what transpired, but Hibbert ended up getting pissed off at me and threw all of my shit out of the hotel room in Whistler out into the hall, including my laptop and cameras. And it was kind of brutal. And I was not happy with Hibbert. And so I wrapped up the season not very stoked about what was going on. I also felt a little bit of an obligation to put him in the movie no matter what, because of my relationships with Vocal. I think probably with Spy at the time. And also Hibbert didn't really get a lot done that year. Like he had a couple of really, really good shots that we ended up putting in the intro to Forward. And then he had a lot of really bad crashes. And I remember sitting there in Boulder with Steele Spence and, a couple of the other guys, maybe Travis Red. And we're just watching all Hibbert's timeline from the year, and it was just crash, 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 crash. And I don't know if it was my idea or one of their ideas, but somebody was like, dude, just make Hibbert a crash segment. And it's like, this could be a thing. Like, this could hit. This could go hard. And so we kind of made it as a joke. And then it was like, oh, it was DNA was the other, the clothing company that was playing a big role in our films at the time. And Hibbert was a DNA athlete. And I remember showing it to Trey Harris, who is the DNA TM, and asking him, like, dude, is this okay as a sponsor? Like, how do you feel? And he's like, this is fucking brilliant, man. Like, this is going to be the best thing for Hibbert's career that has ever happened. Fucking do it. And it's like, all right, well, if the guy helping to pay the bills and, who's sponsoring Hibbert thinks that this is a good idea, just going to do it. Just going to go full send here. And
it's like, oh, fuck you. You're still getting paid.
Yeah, and I think that Hibbert was probably really unhappy with it at the beginning. I'd like to.
When did he first learn about it? At a premiere, or
probably at a premiere? Like, I don't think it's a conversation that we had up front. But I'd like to think that in retrospect, he can look back at it and be like, "This was really good for my career. Like, this put me on the map as a personality of sorts, and really, like, dude, everybody remembers this segment to this day. That's why we're talking about it right now."
So that's what you would like to think, or
that's what I would like to think. And like Hibbert and I think we're good now. So
that's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I love in Guatemalan Persuader when they put the bubble wrap around his head, and he's like, "Fuck you guys, you assholes," and then it just brings you back to your movie. You understand how much he crashes.
Oh, straight up, man. And yeah, I mean, certainly Hibbert went on for a few more years to have a successful career in the sport, and then certainly on the business side, he's worked for a bunch of big brands and found a lot of success. So yeah, I feel as if anything, this was a boon for his career, not a detriment. So Hibbert, love you, man. Thanks for all the crashes.
Yeah, word up, Hibbert. We got to learn who you were through that.
Great question, Stojan. Thanks for pulling that one out.
That was a great question.
Yeah, I thought about bringing it up, but I was like, we give him flowers to Berman, but I'm so happy that you did bring it. Good stuff, Stoj. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Great to see your face, Stojan.
Yeah, man, good to see you.
Big ups, Berman. Big ups, Phil and Iberg, for what you're doing. It's great to watch.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Peace, brother.
Who's next? Did you say there's someone?
Yeah, let's see if Shane McFalls is still on. Maybe he's gone, but let's otherwise put on another filmmaker here in the game. We're going to put on the Brotherhood Film, who now owns or runs a podcast called the Mayron Podcast. Sure, he's going to plan to get you on, Berman, at some point.
While you're getting him on really quick, I'm just getting a text from Kyle Decker, and no story about Level 1 would be complete without giving Kyle Decker a lot of
What's up, Phil?
Jesus.
Oh, your audio's a bit too wild.
Too wild.
Okay, coming.
Yeah, he's going to have to call when he gets in a car. Do you say
Something like that?
Yeah, shout out to Kyle Decker. Well said, Berman. We can't breeze the man's impact on Level 1. Can't breeze through it. All right, then we got time for one more caller. Who's it going to be? We're going to put on, another Denver local, none other than the Tall T business boss.
Big Bad Paul?
One and only, Paul Dole. Let's see if Paul responds. It's always a hit or miss.
Are you just cold calling people, or are people trying to call in? I like the cold call.
No, nobody's calling in. I'm just like putting them on.
Pushing the buttons.
I like it, man.
Oh shit, we got someone though.
Yeah, we want some random person.
I got Shane McFalls. Maybe he's gone.
It looks like there's a human.
Oh. So Shane, I did already ask two of your questions concerning DL and the Freeze limo, but I know you still got one.
That was answered?
Yeah. Great question.
Sick.
Good to see you, Shane.
How you doing? I was on the side of Mount Snow and didn't have service. I just got home, so I'll have to listen back to it to hear the answers. Don't ruin it for me.
No doubt.
Well, shit. I don't think I have anything else then.
Yeah. I think you had something about Crichton, perhaps. Like,
I mean, if you haven't touched on it, like any Crichton story would be awesome. Any Crichton in like Troy hitting rails, or like the switch 10. He does that that one jump. Yeah, there's like the jump in Colorado. He does like every single trick on that. You could cut that out and play it today, and it's like timeless. It's still so sick. There's no wacky grabs. There's no crazy flips. It's all just like basic shit that looks timeless and super good. So any Crichton story.
Man, well, I think we could just talk really quickly about that forward segment, because that was a game-changing part, and it still holds water today.
And this is 2003, right? Like the year he like should have won every pipe event and everything.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're all good, man. That's I mean, that's another thing. I will lead by saying that at the time, I think he was the best skier in the world. I think he was like the best pipe skier. He was leading the charge in what was being done in the street. He was leading the charge in what was being done in the park. And every time you go out with him, he's doing the freshest stuff that's never been done, and with really, really good style and getting clips. And this part really speaks to that. Like the first sequence here that we're looking at in Steamboat, like I think we shot for 2 days while we were hanging out in Steamboat for some BMW bumps and jumps event. So he's like competing during the day, and we're getting up at like crack of dawn, shooting some rails. He's going to the event, and then we're shooting more at night. And like, this is what, 90 seconds, 2 minutes of video part that was shot in like a day or two. And then here again, he's getting like a couple clips on a couple different features in like one night. And then the same thing in Troy, New York, where he ends up doing switch 2 onto a down flat down, and injuring his knee. And then he was out for the whole season. And that was pretty much it until we went on a trip to Newfoundland and followed that up with going to the Poor Boys shoot. Again, shout out to Johnny D, who's always been super supportive. And, at that point, invited Crichton and myself and Simon Dumont, who were all traveling together, to come hang out at the Poor Boys shoot. And, he was willing to let me shoot these guys and put it in the Level 1 movie, even though it was a big exclusive deal that he had put a lot of time and energy and money into. And I mean, Crichton just showed up at this jump that I think they had already shot the day before. And he's like, oh man, if we could groom that out one more time, I'd just like to hit it before lunch real quick. And it's like, okay, cool. And really, it was like midday as you see it here. I want to say there were 2 hits that are not in there, like maybe like a warm up, and then like one where he didn't get the grab quite as well on the switch right 7. But everything else was just like, that's how it happened. Like 15, 20 minutes of Crichton just being towed up, getting sled laps by himself, and ended up being, an iconic session in the film.
Who picked the song? Like, who picked that Homegrown song?
That was him.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I remember hearing that and being like, oh, all right, cool. I can like emo music now because they use this song.
Yeah, Crichton was into the punk scene a little bit, and I mean, as were a lot of people at that point in time in action sports films. It was just like one of the things you defaulted to, and I'm 99% sure. I mean, Crichton can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like that came from him, especially because at every point I was always trying to let athletes choose music as much as I possibly could. That was a big part of it, and he being
that shot used to I remember we would rewind this and be like, dude, we got to get a box like this.
Mm-hmm.
Very sick.
You guys haven't done one. You should do one of these with him.
We will.
Or cares about being on the internet. That shot always used to trip us out too. The little ski slide thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, between this segment and then the one he shares with Mikkel, it's like those are I could watch those and never watch any other skiing ever again.
Yeah, Crichton's sick, man.
You're here.
Super sick. We're all just sitting here. People are watching us live, watching us think of Crichton. It's hilarious.
I'm watching it.
Thanks, 51 people. We're all just four faces looking at that.
There is a story behind each and every one of these shots, and it would take all day or some to tell.
Was that green screen? Was that a green screen behind him? Why does that look so weird? Where the snowcat's driving behind him and he's eating
that
sardines?
he's eating tuna out of a can. That's in Mount Hood. during the quarter pipe shoot, where it was Kurt Heine from Straight Jacket Films, who was one of Johnny D's partners in crime for a lot of stuff. Heine built that quarter pipe, which at the time was one of the bigger quarter pipes in the world. And Simon and Crichton were crashing with me in Hood, I think at Friedel's house, probably, because Friedel had a place up there for the summer, and Welch's. And yeah, again, we got the invite. Johnny really wanted to shoot Simon and really wanted to shoot Crichton. It's like, well, these dudes are with me, so I'm a part of the package deal. If you want them to come, then I come. And Johnny was all about it, fortunately. And we got to hang for this epic quarter pipe session. T. Hall was there too.
That's where he got the Oakley poster on that one.
Absolutely. Cover of Freeze magazine as well. Yeah. Chris O'Connell shot that stuff with some strobes, and just epic, beautiful sunset. And I mean, that was one of the more iconic sessions of the time.
I always thought those were fruits in this can, but tuna fish, more proteins, I guess. That's how you get
very observant
for it.
Hot dog and
well, thank you so much, Shane, for dropping in, man, once again.
Yeah,
always
man.
Instrumental guest appearances.
Enjoy them.
Shane, good to see you, man. Be well.
Peace. Yeah, Berman. Give thanks for your time here. We're going to wrap this up and let you do your million wearing hats work. You know it.
Yeah, thanks for the hour and a half, man, to talk ski in the middle of the day.
You bet. It's always a pleasure. I always got time for stuff like this. Appreciate you guys and what you're doing and giving back and creating something cool for the community. And these opportunities are great. And, I look forward to seeing some other people on the show. I will say one thing I want to plug before we go. Connor Smith, who's also been a big part of Level One over the past couple years since he started as an intern and coming up with all kinds of cool stuff. Connor came up with the idea of a rail jam, and we're actually still in development stages, but most likely kicking off a 5-stop rail jam tour across the U.S. coming up this winter, trying to give away $50,000 in cash. So some big money behind it. And, really bringing back something that the sport hasn't seen in a long time. Certainly not on that level, and maybe never in terms of something that's like an organized tour. But,
awesome.
It's something that, will be open to everyone. And I think, the bar to entry is pretty low for people to get involved and enter and watch and show up at these things. We're working with some awesome resort partners in some really central locations. And if it goes off the way we think and hope it will, it's going to be insane. And
so is it for sure happening?
Like 99% sure.
5 stops.
5 stops.
Across the United States of America.
Across the United States of America.
Do you have a stop in Minnesota?
We, Trollhagen, so not quite Minnesota.
No,
right across
close enough.
The border.
They're pretty awesome over there.
They are pretty awesome. Yep, we're doing Troll stop in the Midwest. Yeah, we're doing Sugarbush, so we're doing the Northeast. We're doing Eldora here in Colorado. We are doing Brighton in Utah. We're doing Trollhagen, and I believe we're doing Big Bear for our Cali stop. All
awesome,
resorts that have a lot of love for the culture, a lot of love for this aspect of the sport, and I think we're like pretty much 100% doing this. We just need to raise a couple more dollars so we can actually give away all the cash that we want to. But I think we're taking steps in the right direction, and this should be a lot of fun and a really cool opportunity for a lot of people.
If you do it the way you guys want, do you guys get will you live stream them?
Yes, 100%.
Sick.
I mean, it's probably going to be something, on phones. I don't think we're going to have enough money in the budget to do something fancy like what Wally did, but that's okay. I think that'll still work fine.
It's got to start somewhere. Just to know that it exists and people can be like, yeah, I get to watch it, or I want to go to it.
Definitely.
No doubt. And another thing, last but not least, would you like to give flowers to anybody while we still got you on the show?
Yeah, man, let's give some flowers to Friedel. Again, just going back to him, he's been the person who's been part of Level One the longest, and played a huge role, and especially doing this walk down memory lane. Lots of awesome things to think about back in the day and how things really got started here. And give flowers to Friedel.
And he's an awesome human being. Double win.
Yep, and he just had a birthday a couple days ago, so. Again, belated happy birthday, Friedel Cody.
Boom, triple that. Shout out to Frito Cody. Give thanks, B-Man.
Yeah, man.
All
Thank
the
you
best,
for your
brother.
time.
Thank you,
Appreciate
gentlemen.
you, and
Pleasure.
Ian loves you.
So good to see you both. Be well. We'll talk more soon.
Take care, man.
Peace.
Peace.
Cheers.
Boom. Bomb.
Yes,
That was a good
sir.
one. That was fun. Our first non-skier, dude.
Yeah, big things, Iguan.
I was
Thanks to the
stoked.
people who joined the show today and stuck with us.
Yeah, we're doing this every Wednesday. Every Wednesday, same time, whatever, 1:30 East Coast time on Wednesdays. We're going to do another one next week.
Yeah, giving flowers to the one and only Gorilla Steve, Style Master.
Dash. Shell. Motherfucking Long. Yeah, we talking Dash
Yeah.
Long next week. So we're going to continue. We got a bunch more people lined up after that. So, yeah, we'll be consistent. We'll be here every week, man. And then we'll see if it works for you guys for daytime or evening when school starts, or if you guys go to school, whoever the fuck listens and watches. We don't know. Just thank you guys.
For real, hit us up with some requests if y'all have any, but the list is definitely long on our end to give flowers to.
Super.
All right, Iberg, thanks again, brother.
Yeah,
Thanks,
man.
everybody.
Happy Wednesdays. Peace.